Hi guys, it's Lynn here. I hope everyone is having a fantastic day. Now today guys, I'm going to talk to you about this rather beautiful and unusual and quite rare cactus plant. A little bit about it and also how you can care for one if you have one or you want one in the future. Now this is called Uebelmania and there's only 3 species in this particular genus. Uebelmania pectinifera or Uebelmania. It's a bit of a tongue twister to pronounce. And there's only 3 species in this genus: pectinifera, gummifera, and Beringi. And the third one, Beringi, is extremely very rare and not one that's commonly seen, if at all, for sale. And the most common one being the pectinifera, which is this one here. And it grows in its natural habitat in Brazil. So it's one of the warmth-loving types of cacti. It does not like cold at all. And it grows in up to 650 to 1,350 above sea level. And this particular cactus, Uebelmania, was very, very common in the 60s, in the 1960s. And in fact, it had a bit of a cult following. Everybody wanted this particular cactus because it was unusual and it was wacky. And a lot of people were really into it. But the cult following sort of didn't last too long because it's not an easy cactus to grow for beginners. If you're not familiar with growing cacti, people would just get them because, oh, this looks gorgeous and everything, and then overwatering or underwatering, all the other things that this cactus can be susceptible to. This sort of happened, but now it's sort of people who grow this particular cactus now know a lot more about it, and plus it's one now. There's a lot of information on how to care for this particular cactus now, which is great, and it is a slow growing cactus. And they are very often commonly seen grafted for that reason. And this particular one, I'm very happy to say, it is actually growing on its own roots, as you can see. I got this one probably about 4, possibly 5 years ago now, from a gentleman called Michael Harrington here at the Cactus and Succulent Society of Ireland. And I was after a one that was not grafted for such a long time. And he said, Lynn, I've managed to find one for you. And I was absolutely really happy about it. It has actually grown quite a lot because they say they're very slow growing, which is why they're often grafted. But happy to say that this is doing very well on its own roots. And now these cacti like a very, very sunny position. And they have a lovely sort of purpley appearance to them. I'll just show you there, just turn it around because it's a lovely coloration on it. It has a deep purple colour. And when it's very, like in the summertime, when the sun is coming right through in the polytunnel, this will go a lovely deep plummy purple colour. Now it's winter here, it's sort of losing its colour a bit more green, but it still has that lovely purpley colour to it, which gives it a lovely sort of different appearance to many other cacti. And also the arrangement of all the areoles are absolutely beautiful on this particular cactus. It is really, really stunning. And as I say, the sunniest position you can give them, they absolutely like, even in the winter time. I have this one in my grow room upstairs, also my office, in a south-facing window to get as much sun as it can, even in the winter time. And that's because it's one of them really sun-loving plants. And they're like a lowish pH soil, so be careful when I'm going to talk a bit about the soil in a minute. If you're using soil that is sort of very high in pH, it can be damaging to the roots on these plants, and that's why, as I say, with the cult following in the 60s, people would just pop them up in any type of potting soil, and a lot of them lost them to root rot and root damage and things like that. So it likes a lowish pH soil. A very, very well draining soil as well is a must with these cacti. And I like to make my own cactus soil mix up, which should be a fairly lowish or fairly neutral pH of a loam-based soil of 3 equal parts. And I like to mix equal parts of a loam-based soil mixed with horticultural sand and horticultural grit. And if you want to know how I make my own cactus soil, links up above to a video on how to make cactus soil in 3 easy steps. And I use this with this particular cactus, and as I say, it's been growing very well and doing very well so far. And if you only haven't, you don't want to make your own soil mix up, then make sure that if you buy a cactus soil, then you add extra grit to it and maybe a bit of extra sand as well, and even perlite if you can't get hold of grit, because drainage is a must with this cactus. And repotting should always be done during its active growing period, which will be from spring until summer. You can pot this up in either a clay pot or a plastic pot. If you're a bit sort of fairly new to cacti and you're a bit nervous about the watering, maybe a clay pot would be better. And it really does depend also if your plant is grafted or not. As I say, Uebelmania is more commonly seen grafted, and the rootstock, they often use like a Trichocereus rootstock, which is more sort of more damp hardy to excess watering and making it easier to grow these, especially for beginners. But if you're growing it on its own roots like this, it's really important that the drainage is a must and the watering. I say water this plant. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about the watering here because it's different to a lot of the other types of cacti. This would be treated very much a little bit like mellow cactus because it's one of the warmth tropical types of cacti rather than it's not a desert cactus. And that means with a desert cacti, I'd normally not water them at all during the winter period. But this cactus does not like to be kept dry too long in the winter. So therefore, with the spring and summer, I'd water it well. Every time the soil dries out in the pot, I'd water it again with rainwater. And if people say, how do you know when the soil has dried out, especially if you've got grit on the top, like I top dress some of the cacti, it's difficult to know. Well, I always lift it up, and this is quite light at the moment. And if I water it and it feels heavy, and then a following week I can't tell if it needs water or not, and I lift it and you can feel it's got a bit of weight to it, that's the best way to do it. But if in doubt, do now. It's better to under than over water. But I always water this from spring to summer every time the soil in the pot dries out. Now in the winter time, these cacti, as I said, don't like to be kept totally dry over the whole of the winter. But they don't like to be kept wet either because they're very, very prone to rot, especially if they are on their own roots. If they're growing on a Trichocereus stock, you don't need to worry as much. But what I do with this particular one is I'll only water this once every 6 weeks in the winter time. And I would never give any fertiliser in the winter either. And as I say, this is a warmth loving plant. I'm going to talk about the temperature in a minute. So because we have this in our house, we don't really have to worry about it staying wet in soil for too long. It's not one you'd have in a greenhouse unless you're in a very warm climate, obviously. But this one I have upstairs in a south-facing window, and in the winter, and I'll just water it every 6 weeks because they don't like to dry out for too long because they are prone to losing their roots. And any of you who are familiar with growing mellow cactus will know it's sort of similar conditions to that, in the fact that mellow cacti also don't like to be kept totally dry all over the winter. They can certainly dry out in their pots like Uebelmania can, but they don't like to be months and months without water in the winter. Now, when it comes to fertilising, now in the spring and summer, I'd fertilise this Uebelmania with a cactus fertiliser, and I dilute it at half the strength, and I only fertilise once a month. And the reason why I dilute it at half strength is because, as I mentioned with a few of the very small type of growing cacti, it's slow growing. So if you over fertilise or just fertilise at the normal strength, and every few waterings, it can encourage it to grow very weak at the top, weak growth, and that's what you don't want. And say slow growing, so half the strength fertiliser, and only use a fertiliser that's for cacti and succulents at half strength once a month. Now the temperature. Now these Uebelmania can take very high summer temperatures in the summer, and as long as it doesn't obviously go above 100 degrees or something like that, and you haven't got them behind glass where it's going to literally cook, they do like to have ventilation, but they can take very high temperatures. But in the winter time, they are not, and this is paramount, not cold hardy at all. They need a minimum, and a bare minimum of 12 degrees Celsius, which is about 55 degrees Fahrenheit in the winter. So this cactus needs to be overwintered warm, and bring it in if you're living in a cold climate, because it's an absolute must, and it would just turn to mush anything below that, certainly below 10 degrees Celsius, 50 degrees Fahrenheit. The ideal temperature to be kept above would be about 15 degrees Celsius, which is about 60 degrees Fahrenheit. That's an ideal temperature, an ideal minimum temperature. We keep this at room temperature, which will probably be about 18 degrees Celsius normally here in my office. And I say in a sunny window. So bear that in mind. This is a tropical cactus that needs to be kept indoors in the winter at a bare minimum of 12 to 15 degrees C, 55 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, flowering. This one has never flowered for me, but it is still very small, so hopefully I'll get flowers on this in the future. And the flowers are like little tiny yellow flowers that form in clusters from the top, from spring and summer, little ones. So hopefully this one flowers in the future. It'll be absolutely wonderful to show you in a video, but as it never has, I've got nothing to show you just yet, but be looking forward to hopefully when it does flower. Now, propagation is from seed, and it's very, very, very difficult apparently to grow these from seed unless you're an expert. So unless you're very familiar with growing Uebelmania and growing from seed, it's probably not one I'd recommend. If you want to get this cactus, you're best to probably purchase one online by some of the online garden nurseries. It's not one you'd commonly see for sale at the average garden centre. As I say, it's a very speciality type of cactus and not the easiest to grow if you're new to cacti, but very special. And if this ever does flowers and I get seed, I'm definitely going to have a go at propagating it from seed. So guys, I hope you enjoyed the video and you found this beautiful little cactus very interesting and a bit of information about it. And thank you all so much for watching. And if you want to know a little bit more on how to grow cacti and succulents, please do check out my website, desertplantsofavalon.com. And if you haven't done already, please do subscribe and click on the notification bell for lots more how-to videos coming soon on my YouTube channel. And also, just want to thank you all for your amazing comments and all of your support. You guys are amazing. I want to send you loads of love, heaps of happiness, and tons of cactus power from across the Emerald Isle. And until the next video, bye. Bye.